Hey everyone, as you guys know, after the Salvation's Edge raid released, I made a little speedrun strat preview video going over strats once they had stabilized for that raid, and I'm going to do the same thing for this raid with Desert Perpetual. So the upcoming speedrun tournament that's going to be hosted by Speedrun.com team members as well as some other members of the community, it's not going to feature just Desert Perpetual, so this will be maybe some prep for some of the encounters that are in this raid, but this is in the context of a full run, which in the Speedrun.com tournament, we're not going to necessarily do like a full run. It might be just certain encounters. So just keep that in mind if you are a speedrun team that is, considering speedrunning this raid for the purposes of competing in that tournament. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started, right? Desert Perpetual, pretty interesting raid here. I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this run here. It's a 13:29. I believe it's been retimed to high 12 because the boss kill, like when we end the timer for this specific category, the Speedrun.com team decided that we'd end it on when the Decoherence Imminent debuff appears, when you actually kill the boss, and that's because Bungie changed when mission complete happens in this raid, so it's a little bit like inconsistent. It used to happen at a certain time. Now, because the extra feats chest has been added, mission complete is delayed by a little bit. And so as a result, we just time off of the actual boss kill now. Now, in theory, the run doesn't end there. Like, you could just stay inside of the boss's radius and die. But, I think a good speedrun team would not do that. I think any team trying to speedrun would not stay in the radius. So just to avoid inconsistencies in the future, we're just going to end it on the first frame that Decoherence Imminent appears on anybody's screen. So let's go ahead and get started with this POV. So my POV is in the middle here. Savage Bull, one of my teammates, his POV is going to be appearing in the top left from time to time here when it's relevant. And the first question you might have upon watching this is, why is the timer frozen at 51 seconds when you guys are moving and obviously doing things in the raid? And that's a good question. So Desert Perpetual, it's a little unique in a lot of different ways, right? You can select what encounter you want. There's a bunch of different stuff, right? But the first thing and foremost thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the start of this raid is that unlike every other raid in the game, when you first enter Desert Perpetual, nothing you do in the raid matters for the first 51 seconds. You can kill all the ads, it's been tried. You can try going into the encounter areas without hitting the middle checkpoints, and nothing you do really does anything. And so as a result, you could actually run this raid on any configuration of classes. You could have 6 Titans if you really wanted to. At least for the start of the raid, there should be no impact, because no matter what class you're on, you can get to the middle on time, and no matter what class you're on, you can get to any encounter within 51 seconds fairly easily, I would say. And so as a result, we have chosen to run 5 Hunters and 1 Warlock, and that's because later on in this raid, there are sections where Hunter movement is going to be useful, and Hunters are just kind of the best class to bring. But in theory, at the start of this raid, you could run 6 Titans if you really wanted to. The other thing that I want to talk about in this raid, and the reason why the timer is frozen at 51 seconds, is because when you first load into a raid, generally speaking, when it comes to Last Wish, Garden, DSE, whatnot, if you don't move a muscle, nothing happens in the raid. Like, the raid doesn't progress. Desert Perpetual is a little different. When you first load into Desert Perpetual, the second anyone spawns in, these balls emerge from the sand behind you and make their way to the center area. And this actually does progress the raid. So if you were to sit still upon loading into Desert Perpetual and you did absolutely nothing for like 5 minutes, and then you went to the middle, you'd see that the interacts are already up. But if you go right away, like from a fresh, and you just move as soon as you spawn in, you're going to have to be sitting there for a while. And that time is 51 seconds, you guessed it, right? So that's why the timer is stuck at 51 seconds, because certain people, they might load in earlier than others. That can be a problem. And certain people, maybe they might load in, but they might be black screen for a while. And so normally we start raids when it comes to Speedrun.com timing on the first input of any player that affects the run. However, your first input might be deeper into this 51 second timer. It might be outside of this 51 second timer. So it really depends, right? So because of that, just to eliminate these variables of maybe certain players having, slower load times than others, maybe some people getting black screened even though the raid is actually progressing around them, we just set it so that on the first frame of the interact appearing, everything before that is set to 51 seconds. And then you'll see here in a moment, so in about 10-15 seconds or so, that as soon as the interact prompt appears on Savage Bull's screen in the top left, he's the guy hitting the interact prompt for us to select an encounter. Boom. You'll see the timer unfreezes, and he makes his way over to the encounter. Now, what encounter are we in front of? We're in front of Hydra, right? So why do you do Hydra first in a speedrun? Well, we'll get into that in just a second here. But first, I want to talk about what we're doing in front of this door. So for those of you that have already watched this, because this run has already been published on my channel a couple days ago, you might be wondering, why do you just like sit here in front of this door? Why don't you just go in right away? And the answer to that question is, well, when we do end up actually going in, there's joining allies inside of this room, okay? And the reason why there's joining allies is because the middle area, when you enter that area and you interact with it, it tries to pull people back to spawn, right? It pulls everybody to the middle area so that if one player succeeds in getting there, it can pull their entire team there, right? Now, this is obviously bad because if you go in too early and you get joining allies back to spawn, then you have to make your way all the way back to Hydra again. And so you'll see that as I make my way through this corridor, my joining allies disappears at 2 seconds. And my teammates, obviously, they went in before I did. So it's going to be very, very close for them. So K3, he found like a specific timing to wait at the door to go in. However, recently, within the last couple of weeks, Bungie changed this. They changed this, they patched this raid. And so there's no longer joining allies inside of these rooms. However, you still have to wait for a checkpoint to be hit, which I'm about to hit right now. So you'll see that in just a second. Right at the border of this load zone boundary. So there's the center load zone, right? The center area, center region. And then there's the Hydra encounter region. And right between the two, there's a border. And right around there, there's a checkpoint that needs to be hit. If you've ever had a team rush past this checkpoint before, you'll probably notice that the Hydras are not there when you walk into the encounter, right? So this was kind of hard to do back then. I think these days it's a little easier to have everyone rush past the checkpoint if everyone's on a sword. And you'll notice that there's no Hydras, or there's no Hydras at all. And so you need to have someone wait, and as soon as the checkpoint gets hit to initiate this encounter, then this checkpoint that I'm standing on right now can be hit as well. And then this checkpoint, you'll see the objective updates in the top left. You can see it on Savage Bull's POV, but you can't really see it on mine because it's covered by his POV. But you'll see there, that checkpoint gets hit. Savage calls as soon as he is ready, as soon as he's near us to get ready to start the encounter, and K3 immediately begins shooting a trace rifle at these Hydras in the middle. You might be wondering, where's the flag? Why is no one placing a flag, right? If you're familiar with raid speedruns or just speedruns in general, you'll probably realize that K3 is doing something called a perma, right? Now, in previous raids, for example, Vogue and Garden, permas have been patched in those raids, but you used to be able to do this thing where if you place a flag right as an encounter is about to start, you can place it and it will stay there permanently throughout the encounter. You can only rally to it once still, but it will stay there for the rest of the encounter, right? Now, in Desert Perpetual, all of Bungie's newest raids, they've added failsafes to make sure that flags get erased after a certain point of the encounter starting. But what K3 is doing is you can still place a flag right as an encounter is about to start, and it will stay there for a couple seconds. So this is really useful because if you guys have tried to start Hydra before, you know that it doesn't really start the encounter for like a little while after you start shooting. So what K3 is doing here is he is making sure that we start the encounter as early as possible while still ensuring that Savage Bull, who's behind here, coming from the middle, gets his flag. And so we've changed our strats a little bit here. Savage Bull doesn't get flag anymore because there's not really a reason for him to get a flag. He just gets joining allies from the middle. We can do 5-man ad clear perfectly fine without losing any time here. Savage Bull actually just loads in on a rocket and he farms a little bit of ammo from the middle ads. He doesn't really need a super either, and he just makes his way up, and it's pretty straightforward. So that's that. And you'll notice here, we're going to split up into 2 teams of 3. Now, this starting ad clear doesn't matter that much, right? It needs to be done fairly quickly, but it's not as sensitive as some other raid encounters. So you got to kill these ads, that spawns in the Minotaurs, and then you cross-shoot the Minotaurs, you spawn in the Cyclops. I marked this Cyclops, and Brio kills it. We kill both sides with Still Hunt now, so, the Cyclops just die instantly. We mark one side because, people need ammo. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is I was going to tell you about why Hydra is the encounter that's chosen to be started first. And one of those reasons for starting Hydra first is because this is the only encounter where really everybody needs flag. Everybody kind of needs flag. I mean, Savage Bull, he can load in on a rocket and full ammo. Remember how I said that, first 51 seconds doesn't really matter what you do. Savage Bull, even if he's not on a sword, he's easily going to make it to that middle interact within 51 seconds. So, he can load it on a rocket. He is basically full ammo. But this encounter, everybody kind of needs ammo. And so we all rally to the flag because this is the only kill that's like almost all weapon based. It's almost all weapon based damage. And so as a result, we kind of need rocket ammo. And you'll see that, I'm obviously on Galley and my teammates are on the when and where. So now that that's been established, how do we actually do mechanics? So you'll notice I'm on one plate and my teammate is on the other plate. And how fast these Hydras spawn in the outer areas is kind of dependent on how fast you kill your ads. So we kill our ads pretty quick here, and by the time I get in, The Hydra is already here, and you can hear, you know, we're just going to, I'll just play the audio here.
2, 3.
We just alternate
6.
calls.
6.
Brio, step on.
Pretty straightforward.
1.
5.
2.
And we just do 4, and then we do 2. Now, there's 2 strategies that could be used to improve this encounter in the future. I'll just discuss them real quick right now. So the first strategy that, maybe I'll throw a clip on screen if I have one, but for those of you who know how to do witness pre-break, which has kind of been patched, I mean, you can only do it once the encounter has started now, so it still works, but you can't do it before the encounter starts. But witness pre-break, you can do the same thing with the middle eye of the Hydra here, right? Now, obviously, this encounter is very different environment compared to witness. Witness has a very long distance between you and him, so pre-break is pretty easy. On this encounter, you have to pre-break from the middle area and weasel your rocket through the hole of the doorway and hit the Hydra's shield while it's rotating. And on top of that, the Hydra's eyeball is not something a precision rocket can track to. And so really, really annoying to do. I managed to do it a couple times, but really, really annoying to do. And also questionable whether it's even faster than just doing the mechanics normally. So definitely, that's like a thing that exists, but probably not something a team should use. And then on top of that, because nobody has the probabilistic Lancet buff that you get from breaking the 6th eye, nobody can break the mid-eye. So you have to pre-break the mid-eyes too, and pre-breaking the mid-eyes is even more annoying. So pre-breaking, probably not going to happen. The second strat you can do, actually, is notice there's 2 eyes remaining on both of the Hydras here, right? So there are these 2 eyes here. In this case, mine are 4 and 5. And what you can do is you can RNG both sides, the 1 and 2, and just immediately shoot after you break your 4th, 5, and 6, and then the middle one, right? You can do that before Hopgoblin locks you up. It's a little bit annoying, a little bit RNG, but you can do it because, you know, sometimes he'll lock you up instantly, sometimes he'll give you some more time, right? We tried calling out what the eye was, and it is just very annoying. It's very annoying and probably not possible. So in theory, you could do the mechs all like instantly right here, but it's also like pretty fast to just do the mid mechanics too, right? Like it's obviously going to be time loss like 10-15 seconds or whatever it is, but it's, you know, it's better than having a 25% chance to run it back on the very first encounter. And yeah, it's just quite an annoying strat to pull off.
Left.
So here,
left also.
Savage 3.
we have 2 people doing mid mechanics. Obviously, I mean, so far what I've shown you in this encounter is pretty much just doing the encounter normally, but faster. We have a trade-off here. We have a handoff because we have 2 people already sitting on plates that get buffed as soon as it's wiped by the Cyclops spawning in and stuff like that. And, or sorry, by the function collapse being suppressed. And then these 2 people just go in on either side.
4.
Right? So I go ahead and call the eye that I read. K3 calls 4 for his side. I called for Savage just before this. So we read for each other. And then so the people going in, they don't need to read for each other. They can just shoot the eye, the 5th one, and then obviously the 6th one is the last one remaining. So right here, Ash just immediately goes in upon seeing function collapse suppressed. And she shoots her 5th eye and 6th eye, and then boom. Instantly, we're getting ready for damage here. Now you'll notice here, I'm getting this Minotaur low. And specifically, I'm also trying to get him headless. When you get Minotaurs headless, they just chase you around. They chase the nearest target and they try to melee it instead of like shooting it kind of normally. So you'll see here, this guy, well, he does shoot me, but he's trying to punch me right now. So he's just going to follow me. And I'm going to switch to Fellwinter's Helm. And I'm going to finisher him whenever I see Ash's side of the shield break, which is the right side. And that's because that shield can block the Fellwinter debuff splash. And so once that shield is gone, I finisher him, which provides, I think, like 20 seconds of 30% debuff or something like that. And then I swap to Apotheosis Veil and my galley damage loadout, right? So here, the way we do damage is a little interesting. So there's an interaction right now between Song of Flame and Mask of Baccharis. So normally Mask of Baccharis, what it does is it gives you stacking 10% multiplicative bonus to arc damage, to stasis damage, and to specifically Lord of Wolves. Okay, now what is arc, what is stasis, and what is Lord of Wolves? Well, arc and stasis, you have the When and Where, which is obviously one of the strongest damage rockets in the game right now, on top of being new gear and having access to stuff like temporal armaments. And then Lord of Wolves is also pretty good for damage. So guess what we're using for damage? That's right, we do Lumina, the When and Where, with Clown Reapers or Clown Bait. And then we swap to Lord of Wolves once we run out of rockets, because this boss obviously has a lot of health, a lot of total damage required to kill this guy. And so Mask of Baccharis, where does that come in here? So Mask of Baccharis, interestingly enough, has 2 things that you probably don't know about it that we use for speedruns. The first thing is that Mask of Bacchus has a hidden 4th stack. It has a hidden additional 10% damage that you do to slowed or frozen targets, I believe, but definitely slowed targets. So what does that mean? Well, Mask of Bacchus, let me pull out my calculator here real quick, right? 1.1, which is 10%, to the power of 4, because they're multiplicatively stacked, means a 46% damage increase that stacks with everything. It stacks with Well, it stacks with debuff, it stacks with normal buffs, it stacks with like Lumina, it stacks with surges, it stacks with everything. So normally, Stasis Hunter or Prismatic Hunter without Goldie, not a great damage subclass, right? Maybe outside of like Silk Strike. However, when you add a 46% multiplicative stacking bonus on top of any subclass's weapon damage capabilities, you start to see things kind of come into form here, right? And so our goal here is getting a 1 cycle, basically killing the boss before he locks up upon, calling forth that second pair of players, right? So in order to do this, we need a high burst damage strategy. This is one of those things that we use for this high burst damage strategy. Now, the second piece is, don't you need kills to refresh your Mask of Bacchus light shift? Don't you need kills to get your dodge back? And under normal circumstances, yes, you do, right? Because the way light shift works is it completely locks your dodge regen. You can't even get your dodge back from a flag, right? So it completely locks your dodge regen. So how are you getting your dodge back if all of the adds despawn when damage starts? That's a good question. First, Apotheosis Veils on super cast effect gives you your dodge back instantly. So nearby hunters, I tell them I'm gonna pop, I pop my super, they have maybe 1 or 2 light shift stacks that they're bringing from doing ad clear, and then immediately they can get another stack. And then on top of this, because Song of Flame provides a fixed percentage ability regen to your teammates, it also regenerates their dodges. So what ensues from this? You'll take a look. K3 and Savage, they're going to make their way across. My teammates, some of them are casting supers in order to get that extra 4th stack that I mentioned that stacks on top of the 3 that you get from just having light shift. And then boom.
Damage.
Do damage. My damage here doesn't matter too much, but I'm basically just using Rocket Pulse with Temporal Blast. Pretty chill stuff here, right? Just kind of trying to dump my super. And one of the reasons why I'm trying to dump my super here is because obviously having my teammates get their dodges back is nice. But after this, I need to start building another super for Wyvern. So I'm trying to end my super kind of early here. And that way I can start proccing Dynamo and using that to start farming my super for the next encounter. Because after this, we don't get any flags until the final boss. So here I throw a healing nade at my teammates. I place an Emp Rift. I, do like a slice attrition orbs GL, I believe. And then normally I would div the boss, but the boss is already dead, right? So pretty solid kill there. Another thing I want to mention is nowadays I don't I don't do 2 loadout swaps. I just immediately swap to div and start divving the boss. And the reason is my teammates at this point, if you hadn't noticed, are already out of rocket ammo. So they're just shooting Lord of Wolves, and Lord of Wolves has a very punishing crit multiplier. So just having a div up, as well as just to make sure that we have a debuff here. By the way, my teammates are all like throwing snares and magnetic grenades and stuff like that to extend the debuff here, because Felwinter's, it only lasts 20, I say only, but it only lasts 20 seconds. So every time they throw like a snare bomb or something like that, it'll extend the debuff back up to 20 seconds. So pretty easy way of keeping the damage up for an extended period of time. Yeah, but this kill, pretty crazy stuff, right? I mean, this boss damage phase is about 90 seconds and we kill him in about 30, right? So about a third of a phase. That's what a 1 cycle is. Yeah, and I'm just, by the way, this run, it's very sloppy, but I wanted to talk about it because I think strats have mostly stabilized now. Obviously, there's some changes that I mentioned, but for the most part, the raid, the encounter order is completely fixed now, and everything is kind of mostly figured out. So I thought now would be a good time to post this video. This run, you can see in the top right here, we've completed 2 runs and we have 12 attempts. So this is from very, very early into runs. We were doing dry runs, and a lot of the stuff you'll see here is pretty sloppy. And our loadouts, we were just kind of testing our loadouts and making sure nothing was wrong with our loadouts during this period of our runs. And so you'll see that when we get to Wyvern in a second here. But yeah, I'm just kind of saying that, you guys are killing so fast. I'm probably not going to do 2 loadout swaps and just run 1 loadout swap and be on Seno and Div, like right after I end with Galley. So here, I'm making my way out of this doorway here. And something cool that I do, I guess, while I'm waiting for my teammates to do DSM is because these ads spawn right over here and I need my super for Wyvern. And you'll notice that this is a problem even though I do this in Wyvern, and I fixed my loadouts now and I never don't have my super. But yeah, I'm going to make my way over to this guy, and I'm just going to use him for dynamo and jump off the map. So you'll notice here when I went through the load zone, and I went from the Hydra load zone and I went back to the center load zone, I was, well, I mean, it wasn't that obvious, but I try not to touch the ground, right? And that's because I wanted to avoid setting my spawn. You'll see here in the top left, Savage Bull is the only one that's not dying, and he's making his way right now to the center area. So he's climbing all the way up above the door, and he's doing some shatter skates. And something cool about this area is that you can actually skip the mini boss that spawns, like the really, really big Hydra. You only need to kill 2 mini bosses here, by the way, in order to activate the mid area and like skip all the ads. It's the big Hydra as well as the closest Cyclops to the center, like maroon colored ball, right? But if you want to skip the mini bosses entirely, this is the only encounter transition where you can do this. Savage Bull is just going to go and completely avoid this area. He's going to completely avoid this area on the left here, and he's going to go all the way out to the right side here. And by doing so, he actually skips the checkpoint that spawns in those mini bosses. And so as a result, he is going to be able to make his way to the middle area here and bounce all the way up. And he's going to get a checkpoint update here in a second called Predestination. And that's going to allow him to instantly hit this interact to open our next encounter, which is going to be Wyvern. Now, why do we do Wyvern second? Well, if you were watching the main POV instead of the top left POV I was directing your attention toward, you may have noticed that we just teleported to Wyvern door. And the reason for that is because every single load zone in Destiny has a default spawn. And the default spawn for the center load zone is sometimes the spawn area, but other times it's literally directly in front of Wyvern door. And so what we were doing earlier is we were, my teammates were, I should say, blocking off the area in front of the stairs in front of the Hydra door with stasis crystals. And by doing this, this forces the game to give you an alternate spawn location. And that alternate spawn location is the default spawn of the entire load zone, which is, in fact, as you can see here, everyone respawns in front of Wyvern door. And so Ash, she's left behind there. She respawned because she set her spawn by accidentally touching the ground for too long, like I mentioned. Not a really big deal. She's just going to get joining allies here. But if we were really trying hard on a run here, that would be kind of bad because she would be late to kill her Minotaur, which could potentially cause problems. But yeah, if you just don't touch the ground, you won't really set your spawn, and then the stasis crystals will effectively block where your spawn would be otherwise. So here, you'll notice I have pulled out Hard Light. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. This is something I think Savage Bull found, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Wyvern has one of the most annoying transitions to get up to the encounter, right? Hydra, you're kind of like there already from an elevated position. The flag is right there. The boss is right there. Very straightforward, right? Same thing with Hobgoblin. You kind of just go down this little white sandy hill and then boom, you're like in front of the Hobgoblin. Wyvern, on the other hand, even speedrunners, it's a bit annoying to get up there, right? Yeah. So what do we do to start the encounter as quick as possible and also get into the encounter without getting joining allies? That's a good question. So first, Wyvern, I'm going to open the door here. And go. So I wait a little bit because the joining allies in this area, in this room, because it's like the second room for whatever reason, just takes a little bit shorter to go away. So we can kind of go in right away. You'll see here the joining ally just goes away at like 1 second, pretty chill. And I'm waiting for the checkpoint behind me to get hit. So remember, every time you enter an encounter area in Desert Perpetual, you need to wait for one checkpoint update to kind of just the one of you entering the area. And then there's a second checkpoint update in front of the load zone. So my teammate K3 right now, he's waiting behind right now at the border of that load zone, just like I did for Hydra. And he is going forward as soon as he sees that first checkpoint update happen.
It's like impossible to
So deeper. Objective updates, you see that. That's K3 passing through the load zone area. And now you get Living Rhythm, which is the actual encounter objective for Wyvern, right? And so my teammates, if they were to die too early here, they're dying using ricochet rounds, heavy burst shotguns, by the way, just on the wall here. But if they died too early, that would actually auto-res them, and then they would get joining allies. So they have to wait again for the second checkpoint update that K3 is hitting here. And you'll notice as soon as that second checkpoint update, I shoot Hard Light. I shoot Hard Light at this very particular area on this triangular rock right over here. So why am I doing this? Well, as you can see here, I'm getting an immune, and that's because I'm actually shooting the Wyvern by ricocheting Hard Light. I believe it's twice, it's 2 bounces here to actually hit the Wyvern. So, boom, get it after a couple tries, joining allies. Sometimes if you just clip his wings, you'll see like an immune number. You'll clip his wings and it won't start the encounter. So you have to actually hit his main body. That's why you saw like, you know, it's a couple immunes. I don't get joining allies. So yeah, that can happen. And then you see they do something called a death warp. Okay, so if you've watched Garden first encounter into second encounter in a speedrun before, similar strat, death warps happen all the time in raids. Basically, when an encounter starts, anywhere there is joining allies in an encounter, which I'm getting joining allies right now, it'll move your ghost to the starting area of the encounter. So you'll watch this, I'm dead, and one of my teammates is currently rezzing me, someone just rezzed me, and this is where my ghost was. This is the starting area of the encounter. So that's pretty interesting. That's called a death warp. And so my teammates, they're just dying so that as soon as I start the encounter, they're going to see their ghost move. They can respawn and they're in the encounter immediately. Okay. So that's it for the transition to Wyvern. And you'll see here, most of us are on time to kill these Minotaurs. Savage Bull is getting joining allies because there's just like no way he's going to get here on time. And so now we have 6 Minotaurs, 5 people, 1 person double dips. Whoever like kind of dunks first is going to double dip here. And we're all going to just pick up Chronon. We're going to make our way into this area. I'm using Icebreaker here to regenerate my energy ammo because I had a primary on and I want special ammo back. So yeah, and now I'm going to swap to a super generation loadout. I'm going to be killing ads with an incandescent sniper here. It has lead from gold and incandescent. The lead from gold is because I have heavy finders on so that whenever I get heavy ammo, I get my special ammo back. And incandescent is to proc singeing because I'm using dynamo to farm my super. So the way we're doing mechanics here is like really straightforward, right? You just have an insta break. You have one person just getting ready to go and climb. Only one person is needed. They have mount on top on. They just mount on top up and instantly pick up all 3 cubes. Very straightforward, pretty hard to mess up. And then the cubes, you obviously just shoot on the first one for all the pulses. Like, I don't know, this is maybe one of the most simple boss encounters ever for speedrunning in Destiny 2. So yeah, Ash right now is going up top. I was hoping to pick up that orb while I was special finishing, but I picked it up after I landed from my special finisher, so no special there. And you'll see here, I just have my Phoenix Dive, so I'm going to use it in just a second here in order to get my super. My melee will register on this Harpy. So I Phoenix Dive again. So I'm kind of panicking right now, by the way, because I don't have my super. I should have my super by now. When Ash calls top, that means she's like already like picked up the final cube pretty much. And so I'm like really late here, right? So yeah, I made myself like 1 heavy brick, which I don't know. My role has very big heavy ammo issues because I swap from sword to tractor all the time. My teammates are mostly just on swords because they're on rockets during the first encounter, and then they can be on swords for the rest because we're grapple meleeing the other bosses. So here you'll see the boss is going to spawn in, and in hindsight here, by the way, like I always have my super now. Like I don't use Verity anymore, and I have like much better loadouts because this is before we like optimized our loadouts really. But I think my big mistake here is I should have Phoenix dived on this loadout well before going into my inventory here. But I swapped my damage loadout, which you'll see here does not have dynamo on it. And so I come back to this loadout, I Phoenix dive, and I get no super energy. And so I'm just kind of like sitting here, like staring at the boss. Normally what I do here is I use Verity and I use Song of Flame. And so Verity, the grenade, if you start with a wisp and then you end with the snap, the resultant ignition gets grenade scaling because it's not a melee sourced ignition. It's the initial scorch was coming from a Death Throes wisp. And so it does a very good amount of damage. Obviously, it's good for stun locking the boss so my teammates can grapple melee faster. And a little pro tech for you guys is Song of Flame with Verities, as long as you have stacks, constantly provides Field of Flame to your teammates. So my teammates, in case any of them ever lose their grapple, obviously Song of Flame gives you grenade regen, but Verity gives you crazy grenade regen. So it's to the point where if you have a Verity Song of Flame next to you while you're grapple meleeing, your grapple comes back like literally like instantly. It comes back like legit like instantly. So that's part of the reason why I was on Verity Song of Flame. However, this was kind of a problem in both this encounter and in future encounters because we're no longer on Liar Grapple anymore. That got patched a while ago. And we're on Syntho Grapples now. And so the Verity Wisp, it kind of goes through the boss and starts seeking out nearby ads, and killing those ads cause problems for Synthos. On top of that, Verity Death Rose uptime, like my damage didn't really matter that much. I just focus on weapon damage these days. So yeah, normally here I would be on Song of Flame, but here I'm kind of just like staring at the boss and shooting area denial because that's really all I can do, right? I mean, I'm trying to save tractor ammo here because I need at least a little bit of sword to not be late on this next transition. But yeah, my teammates, they're basically just grapple meleeing. I mean, this boss encounter is super straightforward to explain. So see here, I try to get a Verity stack. I'm, you know, throwing my Wisp, throwing my Snap. This kill is like really slow too, right? Debuff uptime was bad. No Synthos, just, you know, a bit of a mess. But again, I'm just here to explain the strats.
Yeah, the only encounter
this run is a dry run.
Horrible, and my super horrible is this one.
So yeah, that's it for Wyvern. Don't look at heroes. Yeah. So this transition, it's a little interesting. And one of the things that we do, by the way, is for every single encounter, I mentioned how at the start of the raid, you got to wait for those balls to fly to the middle, right? There's a lot of time gates in this encounter that are based on those balls flying. And the balls start flying when someone leaves an encounter. So it's when you start an encounter, but also when you leave an encounter. If someone is waiting at the exit to an encounter and they immediately get that objective that you get from leaving an encounter after it's finished, that starts the balls moving. And so your transitions, if they're fast enough at least, are all time gated to whether or not you have someone leaving as quickly as possible when the encounter ends. Okay? So K3, you'll notice he's very far ahead of everyone else. That's because in the middle of damage, he leaves and he instantly hits the checkpoint upon leaving the encounter. And that then will spawn the mini bosses in faster at the end of this transition.
We're just fucking plummeted.
Okay. So everyone else here, you'll see Savage Bull, for example, he's going on his way to middle here. K3 is already at the end. I was really lucky here. Like, I'm very excited here. You can hear me to get this sword ammo.
Sword ammo. What?
Wyvern does spawn.
I had like one, right?
Wyvern does spawn.
Oh shit, really? Okay.
Yeah, so K3 is noted here. Also something that we discovered like early on in runs is that if you leave like really early, you get a much earlier Wyvern spawn. So he's saying that right now. Normally the Wyverns take quite a while to spawn, but if you're really early, they spawn really early.
But...
And then the Wyverns, we did some time measurements and stuff. It doesn't really matter how fast you kill the first 4. It's based on when you kill the 5th one, right? So you can kind of chill and just leave all of them alive and kill all of them with splash damage if you want. In this case, I'm just going to mark maybe 1 or 2 of them, and my teammates are just grapple meleeing the rest of them. So I'm just providing a little bit of heavy ammo for my teammates. You can see Savage Bull here, he's on Alethanum to provide, again, ammo for the teammates that are not going to be getting the flag. So I'm marking this guy. There's like some imps in the way, so he's not getting marked. But I mark one of them. And because the Wyvern spawns so early and, you know, we are a little bit late here, I'm just leaving instantly here after making just 1 brick. And so they're working on killing the 5th Wyvern right now. Again, it was a bit scuffed. But yeah, that last Wyvern there, he's on the outside. But he's dying eventually.
Like, try to mark it.
And he's dead. And now we're going to start Hobgoblin. So you can see we split into a group of 3 and a group of 3. The 3 are responsible for killing the Wyverns, fairly straightforward. And in order to kind of time lock the starting ad clear in Hobgoblin, you only really need like 3, maybe 4 people. And so we have 3 people do the transition. They start by opening the door, and you'll see that you have 1 person sit back to hit the checkpoint. That's going to be Savage Bull. And then K3 and Heroes, because they're doing the ad clear that's deeper into the encounter, they have the luxury of going first and getting ready to get the flag right away. So Savage Bull, he's going to wait right at the border here, similar to where I waited for Hydra, same thing. So you'll notice very similar structure going into and out of every encounter. You want someone leaving early, and you want someone hitting this checkpoint at the start of every encounter as well. So he's going to hit that checkpoint, and then he's going to immediately skate forward. And K3 is going to do the exact same thing that he did on Hydra, where he's going to, as soon as he sees the boss spawn in, shoot, and then place a flag. And so now Savage Bull is actually going to be able to get this ammo. And, you know, me and the rest of my teammates that are getting joining allies here, we can kind of scrounge for some of the scraps from the ammo that was made kind of in this area. So the starting ad clear matters a lot for this because the first Hydra spawns when you kill a majority of the ads. I think you can leave like 2 or 3 alive. So there's a lot of ads. There's like 6 groups of ads that spawn. And so having 3 people each on like Choir, Trinity, stuff like that, they can kill the ads pretty quickly. You'll see Savage here. He's just whipping around, shooting those ads. And by the time we spawn in, you'll see that a Hydra is on his way. So I'm just kind of like looking around for orbs, looking around for ammo. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shoot these imps to start racking up progress on my ammo generation meters. Yeah. So how do we do Hobgoblin? Hobgoblin maybe has the least straightforward mechs out of all of the encounters leading up to boss. So the way Hobgoblin works is, let's think about it in a series of objectives, right? At the start, you need to dunk 5 Minotaurs into 5 portals, right? 1 in each. And there's 5 Minotaurs at the start. So very straightforward. You just have set people designated to grabbing each Minotaur and you dunk them immediately. Then, if you guys are not aware, you can actually get plate buff and choose to align to any of the Minotaurs whenever you want. Now, obviously, at some point, the Hobgoblins get impatient and one of them starts lasering you, but you can choose whatever Hobgoblin you want and just start aligning right away, right? So that's something that you should be aware of. That's something we do in speedruns, and that obviously speeds up the mechanics. However, we discovered through some testing that if you align too early, you don't get a third Hydra. You don't get a third Hydra. And so why do you need a third Hydra? If you're one phasing the boss, don't you only need, what, 2 Hydras? Like 1 Hydra to turn on the portals, and then 1 Hydra to get 5 minnows, which you only need 4 of them anyway, to dunk in the correct portals, and then you can start running. So why do you need 3 Hydras? Why do you need 3 Hydras? And the answer is, you guys probably have seen this, we're bringing 6 blue Chronons from this encounter to final boss. And so think about it like this. You got 5 Chronons that you need from the first wave, right? You got 4 Chronons that you need from the second wave. And then 1 plus the 5 from the next wave. So you need 3 Hydras dead. And so you can't align right away. There's like a specific timing that we call out when to align here. So you'll see here, we're chilling. A new Hydra starts to spawn, and K3 is waiting on the align. And you'll see there's a couple more ads that need to die. Heroes is going to pop his Goldie in a second here. There you go. Heroes has popped his Goldie while I make some ammo. And Heroes has a specific timing to call so that K3 knows when to align so that we still get our third Hydra.
Yeah,
So he says dead. It's not actually dead, but that's just the call out to get K3 to align here. You'll see K3 immediately chooses to align here, and then we get this, we start getting laser, right? So I pick up this Chronon. I'm not a dunker. I actually just hold on to this for a final boss, and I am the baiter. So we have 4 people here, and you might notice there's some deaths. We have 4 people here that are dunking. Now, normally how this encounter works is that you have 3 people with buff, and then you have 3 people without buff. And the 3 people without buff are responsible for filling 4 portals. But obviously having one person have to do a second go around and do a second dunk is going to be time loss. And so how do we handle this? Well, what we actually do is we have 2 of the people that get plate buff. So you have 1 person that's responsible for aligning, that's K3. The other 2 people have Chronons already. They have Chronons from the second Hydra. So what do? They simply dunk in the rings that they know need to be dunked into. We have specific people dunking. So let's say the callout is 3. That means 1, 2, 4, and 5 need to be dunked. We have someone that dunks in the lowest number, the second lowest, the third lowest, and the highest, right? So what does this do? Well, we actually found out that if you have a buff and you have a Chronon and you dunk into a ring, it will still count your dunk even though it kills you. And so we're going to get 2 deaths here real quick. Savage Bull's dead, he dunked. And Heroes, he's the last dunker, and he calls. So Heroes, because he knows that his Minotaur is generally the furthest away from the rings, he's going to be the one that calls out when to bait. And so I start baiting. I jump over here. 7, 6, 5. There we go. And K3, he's using Grapple and Eager Edge in order to actually make his way over to me. I just realized I have not been in full screen on this video for quite a while, so let's go back to full screen. He's going to go ahead. He's going to detain me, and boom. Right? So this encounter is actually about 10 seconds faster in terms of mechanics compared to before. And the reason for that is because now, if you guys are not aware, you can no longer bring Chronons from this encounter to final encounter. That was patched very recently. And so we've changed our strats a little bit. Final boss looks completely different because obviously you can't just instantly dunk into the hoop. And so the way that we do this now is K3 can just align right away because we only need 2 Hydras. So he aligns right away. And if we're good and on time, we save about 10 seconds on this portion. So that's pretty nice. But yeah, we have 3 Hydras. At this point, every single person in the fire team is holding onto a Cobalt Chronon. So that's pretty cool. I'm just farming super a little bit, trying to get a little bit more heavy ammo. And again here, normally I would have my super, but I don't have it here. I'm also not on Verities anymore. I'm on Apotheosis for both encounters, and I'm just focused on doing damage. So here, I just throw a healing nade for my teammates. I get my Verity. I do my Area Denial GL. And again, you can see that Wisp just seeked off and tried to kill an ad, and probably did kill an ad. And so that's going to be ruining the Synthos for my teammates. Again, something we discovered by doing this run and other dry runs. I'm trying to get some Verity stacks here, kind of in a suboptimal way. That's okay, the boss is dead on the floor. And these days, what I do is I leave when the boss is at like half HP. We are much better at keeping Synthos now, so the boss dies much faster. And so I just leave. I just leave when the boss is like half HP. I say one tractor, I say my goodbyes to my teammates, I wave at them, and I make my way to the door. And so having someone at the door right away, this transition is gated to predestination. So the transition where you like spawn in the Wyverns and stuff, that one is gated to the Wyverns. This one is gated to you leaving the encounter like pretty early, because the Minotaurs that spawn, they spawn in instantly. You can't skip them in any way. And so even when you kill them, there's like a long waiting period. And the start of that waiting period is dictated by when the objective hits upon leaving this encounter. So see here in just a second. as soon as you enter this area and hit the next load zone, you get a new objective, and that's going to be the objective for going to the final boss. So, wayfinding, boom. This transition, one of the reasons why like I don't well skate it and my teammates, some of them are shatter skating it, some of them are Lumina grappling it. It doesn't really matter how fast you are, because even if you instantly kill these Minotaurs, you have to wait for the balls to move. And so a lot of these transitions are like pretty chill, because you're kind of just waiting on something else to happen. So my teammates, they use their goldies because they were on they were on Golden Gun during Hobgoblin mechanics. They didn't use their goldie for damage because it's damage loss. And so yeah, they have their goldies by now. They're just killing these guys. Again, it doesn't really matter how fast we kill these guys, because notice when we go to middle and we get this predestination objective here, you can't actually start the encounter. Like, you're still waiting for the balls to move. So this transition is just gated to when the balls start to move, which is why I leave the encounter early. So see here, I'm chilling, and again, this is just not interactable right now. We're still waiting. So we're kind of just chilling here. I'm fixing my auto splitter because it incorrectly split by accident. We're just hanging out. There we go. Flag is placed. Someone goes down and insta starts. Nowadays, the way that this works is we actually have 4 people rejoin on Titan, and 1 person just insta starts the encounter, and everyone death warps in, and they don't really need the flag. Only me and the person starting the encounter, I believe, get the flag, or maybe just I get the flag actually. So yeah, kind of interesting change here. But let me show you what the strat was before the Chronon carryover got patched. So we'll take a look over here. Everybody's chilling. Everybody's rallied on their rocket and stuff. We're all hanging out. And, you know, nice little waiting time here while Maya is having a bit of a yap session. And, you know, I'll skip past this a little bit because, you know, I'm sure you guys have seen this voice line before.
I can smell the blue.
But yeah, all 6 of us have blue Chronons here. And we're basically praying that this hoop is a blue hoop. So, yeah. We actually do have a backup strategy, because in case we were going to run this for the tournament, where instead of a 1 in 3, it's like a 1 in 3 into a 1 in 2. So what we would do is we would send heroes through. He's like our sacrificial lamb. And if he manages to make it through, then everybody else jumps through. But if he dies, then what we do is we have him pick up 1 Chronon of our choosing, you know, based on the reading of the hoop. So we do a little bit of max. And then if heroes dunks into that, and then we just all jump in right after. And so there's a period of time where as soon as someone dunks, like 2 seconds later, the hoop goes blank. The hoop goes blank. And while it's going blank, it's already decided on the next color. And so because of that, if you just jump through, even though you don't know what the color is, if you get the right color, it'll count as a dunk. So what you'll see here is heroes makes it through, so everybody else just jumps through. We're saying nice, 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 and then boom, instantly, damage is started. Right? We literally, like, it says chronal energy readied, right? The Hydras have literally just spawned in, and already the digitization timer is gone, right? So that's why this strat was like really, really strong. But obviously it doesn't work anymore. I mean, in theory, maybe you could save Minotaurs and like kill them as the encounter is ending and then pick them up after the encounter wipes your Chronons, but that seems very annoying, and you can only have 5 alive at a time, and that would interrupt your damage, and you could bring them to boss, but then it wouldn't be instant. You would still have to do some mechanics, so that's just kind of annoying. Maybe something we'll explore in the future. Not even something I've really tried. I don't know if they despawn on the floor too once the encounter is over. They probably do. So yeah, so we do max now. But yeah, our backup strategy, like I discussed, is, you know, heroes goes in, he gets rezzed. If he dies, we do 1 Chronon, and then we hope that the next one at least is going to be blue. Now we all grab 2 people per plate here, right? Because you can rebuff even after you've done the mechanics. So we all, you know, 2 people on each plate, and then we mount a top up, and we hover, right? So I'm gonna hover. My teammates are gonna throw little stasis crystals that they can stand on in order to get up. So just waiting. I start floating down a little bit here, so I borrow their stasis crystals, and boom. And the reason why we don't just like kind of go up super fast is because if you are not high enough, like if you're over here in this area, when the boss actually spawns in, he just physics you to death. So you're either on Mount Atop, he rises, and you're floating above this area completely, or you can just make some stasis crystals and like camp up there if you want. So yeah, I like barely make it up here, and my teammates,
Standing.
we just split up into 2 groups of 3, right? So we do the classic standing shooting call. 1 person stands on a cube, starts shooting. The other person says either standing or shooting. I pick up.
One of my teammates just fell.
And he says shooting, so I pick up the shooting one. And the other side here, there's some, again, sloppy run, just some mishaps going on.
What are you doing?
Yeah, shooting, guys.
Oh,
Yeah, so I end up doing their third for them,
dodge.
which is fine. I call it dodge because I'm about to cast my super. So they dodge to get 1 light shift stack. I cast my super. They immediately get a 2nd light shift stack. And then I pop galley and I swap to tractor because they're going to be able to dump all of their rockets by the time the galley runs out. And so I tractor here. A little bit of a scuff star. Tractor was late because of obviously what happened. And yeah, I'm just kind of spamming snaps. So one of the hunters here is looking for a Chronon. These days, I'm the one doing that mechanic because we changed our damage strategy. So yeah, pretty chill. I'm kind of just thumping rocket pulse, trying to end my super as fast as I can so I can start throwing nades. And my teammates, they're all, like I said, on Lumina, Bacchus, Rocket, the when and where, using Bacchus stacking with Song of Flame regen. And then they swap to Lord of Wolves once they're out of rockets because this boss obviously has a ton of health. So yeah, kill is decently fast. It was a bit scuffed, right? I mean, obviously, like, you know, people are dying, and I think I'm gonna end up dying here in a second too to some imps, which is unfortunate. But the boss dies, you know. I'm alive in time to tractor for final, just barely, and I swap to a final stand loadout, just on Rain of Fire Horseman, and the boss is dead. So our kill was pretty bad there, you know, because of some stuff that happened, but that's just kind of the strat for killing, at least with all these hunters. Now, how do we do the encounter now? So I do want to discuss because this encounter has obviously changed quite a bit. So we've been streaming, I think we streamed a session or two of just us doing Final Boss, and we do Final Boss basically completely different now. And I'll kind of explain how it works. So first of all, let's talk damage. The damage strategy is you have 1 Warlock, which is me, and then you have a bunch of Titans, and I think we have like 1 Hunter. And the Titans are just doing Finality PK because we're doing mechanics on swords, and so you're not going to have enough ammo to make good use of something like a rocket. And so we're on Finality PK. The kill is still a 1 portal. It's still fairly fast. And the way that we do mechanics is as follows. So I think one day, Corregos Final Boss is a really good example of how speedrunners actually develop and break down and test strats against each other. And we tried a bunch of different Corrego strats. So initially, right, one of the strats that an any percent team used, and any percent is just loading into the raid and doing Final Boss, basically, right? So any percent, one of the strats that a team used is, I believe they would pick up 2, they would pick up 2, and they would dunk 2, and then they would have another 2 people pick up an additional 2. So let's say the first ring is white, right? Let's say the first ring is white. And so then they would pick up 2 white Chronons, but then they would also have an additional pair of people pick up 2 red Chronons. And then what they would do is they would wait for the red Chronons to respawn, and then they would have this initial 2 people pick up the last 2 red Chronons that have respawned. You'd then have 4 red Chronons, and then all of these people just jump through the hoop, and you pray that it's red second. And in red second, that's a 50-50. Now this strat, it's pretty decent, it's not too bad. We also tried doing the mechanics normally. Just doing the mechanics normally, but fast. So reading, picking up the Chronons, doing the mechanics normally. That ended up being, I think, a little bit slower than doing it this way. Then I had another idea, which was trying 4-2, which was at the very start of the encounter, when you read that it's white, you shoot 2 white, and then you wait for the respawn, you get 2 more white, and then you dunk 4 white at the start of the encounter. And then what you do is you break 2 blue and 2 red, which you have on the ground, which are the only possible remaining colors, which means you don't have to wait for another respawn and that there's no RNG. You can just have these people split up. 2 of them pick up a blue and 2 of them pick up a red, and you're not waiting for a respawn because the blue and the red are already on the ground, right? So they pick up the blue and they pick up the red, and then all 4 of them jump through at the same time, or you can read because I'm pretty sure you have time to read by then, and then you're done. So that's another strategy that we tried. That strategy, pretty complicated to implement, especially with Chronons despawning on the ground after a period of time, so kind of annoying. Another strategy that we tried was dunking 6 of the same type of Chronon, which is something you can do. The only issue is you have to transfer that cyclical buff onto different people at different times. So for the first 4 white Chronons, you can have people basically do the same jobs, right? You have 1 absolute, you have 1 constant, and then you have 4 cyclicals, and then you transfer that buff over. So 2 of the people with cyclical that are already holding Chronons, they grab absolute and constant, and the people that were formerly absolute and constant, they grab cyclical and grab these last 2 Chronons. This was also kind of annoying, and we had issues with, you know, Chronons like changing color and stuff. That was kind of annoying, okay? So the final strat that we settled on, I think, is something that K3 came up with, which is an interesting hybrid strategy that you probably wouldn't expect. And so the way that it works is as follows. So you have a left plate. I really should move to like paint or something. What should we do here? You know what? Let me just find like a random background image that I can use. Yeah, let's just shout out Guardian Photographer. We're gonna draw on top of this, okay? So you have a left plate, you have a middle plate, and you have a right plate. And I'm sure you guys know what buffs are given by each. But at the start of the encounter, I believe you split up 2, 1, 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 2, 1, and 3. Okay. And at the very start of the encounter, me and K3 are standing on left plate. We have Still Hunt, and we kill our Hydra. We jump up to this plate, and to this buff plate, and I get the right crits with Still Hunt. He gets the left crits with Still Hunt. And then we gather on this plate, and we instantly get Temporal Oculus. At that point, we then split up. And how do we do things? So we split up into 2 pairs, or actually, I believe it's 2-2-2 even. Yeah, I believe it's 2-2-2. Yeah, it's 2-2-2. Sorry. Let me correct that. Yeah. So it's 2-2-2. And these 4 players, they split up into 2 pairs with 1 L, 1 M, 1 L, 1 M, or 1 absolute, 1 constant, like pairings, right? And what we do is very interesting. I really like this strat. It's pretty unique. So the left plate people, so me and Savage Bull in this case, K3 and Brio being the other pair, we read the center ring and we shoot all 3. Because when the hourglass is drained completely at the start, you have 0 out of 6 dunks. Even if you break an incorrect chronon balloon or whatever you want to call it, you can't go negative, right? So it doesn't do anything. So me and Savage, what we do is he reads the ring, he says white, and I shoot all 3 of the white mines that are floating around the arena, and 2 of them drop correctly. And so the 2 people on the right, what they're going to do is they're going to take note of where those chronons dropped with the messages in chat, and they're going to go ahead and go grab them. Now, while this is happening, something interesting is occurring. The other 2 people, so the other LM pair, the other absolute and constant pair, that's K3 and Brio, they're also reading, but for a color of their choice. So if we call white, they're looking for blue or they're looking for red. It's up to them. They can pick one. So let's say they pick blue. They're going to shoot all 3 of the blue chronons. And at that point, me and Savage and K3 and Brio, we're all going to scatter and immediately go back to our plates. So K3 and Brio, as soon as they're done and they shot all 3 of the blue, for example, they're both going to make their way to right plate to get cyclical. I'm going to stay on left, and Savage is going to go onto the middle plate. That's going to give these 2 the buff that they need to pick up the chronons that they just themselves spawned. So they know where they are because they just made them. So now at this point, you're realizing it's white, we've dunked, and so it can either be blue or it can be red. Okay? So now Savage Bull's responsibility as the only absolute in the encounter is to call out what color the ring has now become, right? So it's either going to be blue or it's going to be red. If it's blue, then K3, because he is the one that knows the color that he chose, he will call 4. He's going to call 4. And now what does 4 mean? 4 means that we're going to dunk all 4 of the chronons at the same time. We wait for a blue respawn, which should be happening by now. I'm shooting. Heroes, who at this point I believe has the buff that can see whether it's yes, no, right? He still has this cyclical buff. He was one of the first people to pick up a chronon. He's going to call yes, no as I locate the blue mines. And so while I'm shooting them, he says yes, no. And then the first 2 people to dunk, which were, of course, Heroes and Ash, they're going to pick up 2 blue chronons that are respawning. And then, because we already are at 2 out of 6, they dunk 4 chronons at the same time to get 6 out of 6. And with this strategy, it's 10 seconds faster than the 4-2 and 2-4 strategies. So pretty unique stuff. Now, in terms of RNG, the 4-2 and the 2-4 strat, that was a 50-50, whether or not you run it back. And obviously the original strat where you dunk 6 at the same time, that was a 1-3, so a 33% strat. Now, if you go down this branch, which is a 1-2, this is a 100% guarantee that it works, right? 100% guarantee. You're just waiting for the 2 new respawns, and then all 4 people dunk at the same time, and you're good, right? What about if it's red? Well, if it's red, K3 is going to call 2, which means the second set of dunks is going to be done 2 at a time. So at this point, you have 4 people with cyclical buff, and 2 of them have blue chronons. So we need 2 red chronons. And so the red chronons, they're already sitting there. You just instantly start shooting them. But you obviously still need to call yes, no, because we're at 2 out of 6 now. You don't want to drain the hourglass. And so you start shooting them. And the 2 people that are available, which are, of course, Heroes and Ash, they're going to pick up 2 red chronons, and they're going to dunk instantly, which will get the hourglass to 4 out of 6. And then Savage Bull is going to call blank. So remember how I said earlier that a ring, it will generate a new color even though you can't see it by the time the ring window is invalid for dunking the current color. So when you dunk a blue chronon, a 2-second, 3-second window, and then after that, the ring will change color, but it won't show you what the new color is. But because we're RNGing it, we just say when the ring is blank, these two people can just jump through, and that's a 1 and 2. So this strategy then becomes a 50-50 if it is white, red. So basically, white, red, and blue, that's fine. White, red, and red, or sorry, white, red, and white, that's not fine. And then obviously white, blue, doesn't matter because you're going to dunk 4 blue. So it is a 75% chance that the strategy works. And it's also nice that this happens to be the fastest strat that we know of. Now, we also tested a couple other strats, for example, like shooting all 9 of the mines when they drop, and then just RNGing back-to-back-to-back blank dunks. This strategy is not super viable because it's very difficult to communicate all of the correct mines at the same time. And we discovered quite painstakingly that the spawn patterns of mines, we thought the spawn patterns were fixed in terms of the arrangement of what mines were what color. Unfortunately, this is not true. The mines do spawn in the same pattern and move the same way at the start of the encounter every single time, but the arrangement, the pattern of every single like mine color is not the same every time. I'm not saying that like, you know, a certain mine is always going to be white or something like that. It was like the distribution of the pattern of where these mines were was also not something that you can communicate in a reasonable amount of time because the patterns were even different. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this raid. I mean, we can watch the end of the run here, but yeah, at this point, by the way, you can see here, if you ever do like a run yourself, and you'll see that like when this chest spawns in, we get mission complete like very, very quickly. Now, because there is like a second chest, the game is like gives you like a little bit more time to spawn in that second chest for feats. Mission complete is like extra delayed. And so now we just end the timer on decoherence. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed, watching this little yap session about Desert Perpetual, and I'll catch you guys later, and hopefully we'll get a much faster run in the coming weeks. So goodbye for now.